This anime follows the life of a boy called Yusato. He's a simple schoolboy who doesn't stand out at all in his poor life. His grades are standard. He has few friends and has never managed to attract the attention of a goth girl. And just like all of you, he would like to be in a fantasy world to fulfill his most bizarre dream. One day, someone steals his umbrella and he decides to wait out the rain because the princess is afraid of getting wet. Suddenly, the president of the student council, Suzyun, arrives and warns him that the school is about to close. Yusato takes this as a warning to leave soon, but the vice president called Kazuki shows up. He's the typical perfect guy and says he'll let Yusato keep his umbrella in reserve. They ask him if he wants to go home with, and he can't believe he's getting the chance to hang out with the two most perfect and admired students in the school. As they walk, Yusato asks them if they are a couple. They both say no, and that the fact that they are dating is just a rumor, as they both spend a lot of time together on the student council. Soon after, Suzyun asks if Yusato has any plans for the future, and his plans are to stay locked up at home watching anime and getting as fat as he can. A dignified and perfect life. Suzyun then reveals that she has no plans for the future either, as she achieves all her goals very quickly. She reveals that for this reason she feels isolated and thinks she doesn't belong in this world. Suddenly, Suzyun and Kazuki stop. Yusato is confused, and Kazuki asks if he heard a bell, but Yusato heard nothing. They hear the bell again, this time even louder. They get closer, and suddenly a magic circle appears above their feet. Kazuki starts to get scared, and Yusato realizes that they are being summoned to another world. Suzyun laughs as she asks if he means that they have arrived in a place full of magic, monsters, and heroes. Seconds later, they open their eyes and find themselves in a strange room with a man sitting on a throne. The man introduces himself as Lloyd, the king of Linger. He makes the typical explanation by saying that they have been summoned as heroes of this world because the demon king has risen and is currently gathering his army. The kingdom has been attacked for the last 2 years by demons, and they barely survived. Their last hope was to summon heroes from another world to fight the demon lord. Kazuki asks them to return them to their world, but the king explains that this is not possible. Kazuki continues to complain, saying that they all have families and other things to deal with in their world. The king then kneels in front of Kazuki, promising to find a way to send him home after the job is done. He then reveals to everyone that the summoning spell seeks out people with the potential to become hero. In short, everyone with the potential to become a hero will hear a bell ring, and Suzyun and Kazuki understand this condition, but realize that Yusato got to go by accident, as he didn't hear anything. They move on to check her magical aptitude, and Suzyun happily touches a ball, a crystal ball, people, and then a yellow glow appears. Then it's explained that this means she can use thunder-type magic. Kazuki touches the crystal ball, and it turns white, revealing that he has a light attribute, which is the strongest attribute, as it completely counteracts the demon lord's power. Yusato also decides to try, but only a green light appears. Suzyun and Kazuki say that this is a very beautiful color, but everyone around is terrified, especially the girl who is measuring their power, and runs back to the throne room. There she tells the king about the enormous potential of Suzyun's Kazuki, but there's one problem, and that's Yusato. The king laughs, but is shocked to discover that the crystal has turned green. On hearing this, the king quickly tells the girl to shut up, which makes Yusato start to think that her attribute is bad. The king, very frightened, says that they should take Yusato as far away from the castle as possible. The king orders his guards to get ready, and Yusato asks if he is dangerous, and if there is anyone else with his attribute. The king says yes, but that it's someone else who uses the same kind of magic that he can't find out about. Suddenly, a woman enters the throne room, startling everyone, and she is the person the king was talking about. She asks the king how the summoning ritual went, and the king tries to evade the subject, but she notices Yusato and asks who he is. The king explains that he was summoned by mistake along with the heroes, and also lies to the woman by saying that Yusato is an ordinary commoner, but she clearly realizes that the king is lying. She asks his name and introduces herself as Rose, the captain of the rescue team, but just then, the woman from before intervenes, saying that they still haven't explained how this world works to the heroes. Rose then prepares to leave, while the king is relieved that everything worked out, but Yusato wants to know what her magical attribute means. He then asks what his green light means, and on hearing these words, Rose stops. She turns around and asks if he has just said green, and when Yusato confirms it, she tells the king that she will take Yusato with her. The king is terrified, and Welsi casts a spell, creating a bubble around Yusato, forcing him out of the castle. However, Rose rushes out with her insane speed. Welsi's bubble goes out of the window and tries to take Yusato as far away as possible. However, the speed and power of Rose's weapon allows her to reach him. Then she punches the bubble, breaking it, and Yusato thinks his life is over, but Rose manages to reach him and catch him. She tells the king that she will turn Yusato into a proper healer and leave. Minutes later, Welsi explains to Suzyun and Kazuki that Yusato has been taken away. They are worried that he might be in danger, but Welsi explains that this is not the case, as he has been taken to be part of the rescue team. She reveals that Yusato's attribute is healing magic, and healers are rare in this world, and Rose is one of them. Welsi Cassie explains that Rose will teach Yusato everything she knows, but her training methods are insane. Rose, upon arriving at her base, explains that Yusato has the potential to become a healer. He is very confused, and she reveals that he will live here from now on. She then calls the rest of the members, but when Yusato looks at them, he realizes that they all look like bandits. Rose tells them to take care of Yusato, but they all look at him as if he were a real murderer. He tries to back away in fear, but they all start introducing themselves, and Rose explains that they all belong to the squad, but they're not healers. In fact, her rescue squad only has 2 more healers, but they are elsewhere, which is why she is going to teach him about healing magic in person. Yusato is terrified, and his instincts tell him to scream and run, but he can't move. He tries to ask for another instructor, but she ignores him and says that the training starts tomorrow. The gang of thugs smile at him and tell him that from now on he'll live through hell because Rose will teach him. The next day, Yusato meets Kazuki and Suzune, who are relieved that he's okay. He apologizes for worrying them and says that he'll just go through hell training like Rose. The two are surprised by this supposedly hellish training and ask him if he's ready, and he says yes, because even if the training is hellish, he wants to make himself useful to help them one day. Out of nowhere, Rose appears and asks if the heroes have left. Yusato is afraid to return to reality and doesn't answer. Rose then explains that he's not in prison and that he can meet his friends whenever he wants, as long as it's not during training hours. Yusato then thanks her, and she gives him a diary to write down his training program, his experiences, or whatever he wants. So begins his first day, the complete opposite of hell. In other words, his first task was to concentrate and relax. He feels something in his chest, and Rose explains that this is magic, and she will teach him how to project it out of his body. After finishing this training, Rose orders him to read a book. Using the images, Rose explains their current location and where the demons lie, showing how close they are to each other, and the place where they live is the demon's next target. She tells him to read the book because that way he will learn more about the nation, races, and demons of this world. Yusato starts reading it, thinking that this training is easy. However, the next few days were different, as Rose forced him to run until he couldn't take it anymore, and every time his legs failed, Rose slapped him with healing magic and ordered him to run again. Yusato gets up and runs for his life, but she tells him that even if he dies, she will heal him back to life just to make him run again. Yusato believes that she is out of her mind and decides to vent in his diary. On the 6th day, Rose thought he was too slow and insulted him, so he ended up hugging the floor, and again, he decides to vent in his diary. However, as he tries to get up, he notices that his hand is glowing, and he's confused because it looks like healing magic, but he doesn't understand why it's being activated. Days 8 and 9 were pretty much the same, running to exhaustion, getting slapped, kicked, and repeating this all day. However, without realizing it, Yusato was healing himself whenever he got hurt. Later, he realized that he was using healing magic automatically and started running again, this time without being told to. However, things changed on the 10th day, as he now knows how to use magic and can run without getting tired. However, he had doubts about whether he could help Kazuki or Suzune, because so far he had only been able to run by healing himself, and because he was thinking too much. Rose added 1,000 push-ups to his training program. Yusato knows he can't do it alone, so he continues to use healing magic to make sure his body can cope. Rose then reveals that she is forcing him to train his body, as he needs to outrun the enemy on the battlefield and save his fallen comrades in the process. Therefore, the faster he runs, the faster he will be able to save them. Yusato is surprised by these words, but she orders him to continue doing push-ups. He continues his training, but is surprised that Rose hasn't shouted at him. He should be happy about this, but he's actually scared. He quickly gets used to this training, and Rose starts adding some weights as he runs. Then more than 20 days pass, and Kazuki and Suzune visit him along with the princess and a knight. When they get there, they are shocked to see Yusato doing push-ups with Rose sitting on a huge rock above him. She complains that he's too slow and motivates him not to give up, but our boy grows up and says that it's so easy because she's light. Rose then adds another stone, and despite his initial regret, Yusato continues to use his magic to heal himself. Rose even admires his determination, saying that he's becoming the kind of man she likes, and the others can't believe that Yusato is overcoming all this. But Suzune totally changes her mind after realizing that Yusato is getting really hot, full of muscle, just the way she likes. However, the knight becomes furious and grabs Rose's collar, asking why she is trying to kill Yusato. Rose then grabs his hand. He says that he will use his methods to make Yusato become his right-hand man. She says that Yusato is a good match because he hates to lose, and she loves the fact that he never gives up. Rose then orders him to take a break and have lunch. While resting under a tree, Yusato discovers that the strongest knight in the kingdom, Sigris, is the one teaching Kazuki and Suzune how to use a sword. He finds this impressive, and Kazuki then asks him if his training is always so strict, and Yusato simply reveals that today's training was quite easy. Suzune decides to take a closer look at our boy's muscle. She's completely interested twisted in his body, which is getting huge, so she can't contain her curiosity. Kazuki then continues, explaining that he sensed Yusato was going through a difficult time. Yusato confirms by saying that he wanted to run away at first, but now he's fine, and is even enjoying the training and the life he leads here. Suzune is impressed by the fact that he has already found where he belongs. He shows her his healing magic and explains that he will be able to help them in the future. Suzune takes this chance to flirt, saying that she's dying to be healed by him. However, Yusato simply says that it's too late to act like a normal girl, and she gets furious. But even the princess agrees with him. So we get to the next day, and Rose gives him a bag and tells him they're going outside. The bandits are worried when they realize that the time has finally come, and Yusato is confused, but after a few hours they reach a cliff, and Rose reveals that in front of it is a very crazy forest where some powerful monsters lie. She then gives him the following order. He can only return home after killing a large bear. Yusato tries to refuse, because this is one of the strongest monsters in the forest. Besides, he doesn't know how to fight, because she only taught him how to run and heal. However, Rose gets angry and throws him into the forest. While in the air, Yusato starts to freak out because he's in a free fall to his death. He then turns around and casts healing magic to survive the impact. Fortunately, this worked, and he is relieved to have managed to survive, and uses his healing magic to heal himself again. However, he knows that as he is now inside the forest, he must follow Rose's instructions if he wants to return home. So he makes the decision to kill a large grizzly bear. He claims that this bear must be no more than 2 meters tall, and that's nothing for someone who has survived hell like him. Suddenly, the bear appears behind him, and he starts to run away from the bear that is chasing him, and Yusato is very scared because the bear is much bigger than he thought. Fortunately, as his training consisted of running, he knows he can outrun the bear. He thinks there's no way the bear can reach him, but the bear is right behind. He remembers all his training and how he endured that suffering. He thinks the bear isn't as scary as Rose and decides to fight it. However, 2 more bears appear behind the big one. He runs off, and suddenly there is a waterfall nearby, and he decides to jump into it. Luckily, he manages to escape the bears and survives. He swims to the shore and dries his clothes. Then he checks his backpack and sees that it only has a few rations, a canteen, and a knife. He complains about not having anything to light a fire and calls Rose a demon. He bites into bread harder than a brick and says that this mission is impossible. But his situation worsens when he hears some wolves. The first day he manages to survive, so he marks his first day on a tree and falls asleep. The next day, he decides to explore the forest. He keeps marking the trees so that he doesn't get lost, and because he feels he must know his enemy before he can defeat him, he decides to find him in the forest. After a while, he finally gets some clues. When he sees some claw marks on a tree, he thinks they are the creature's claws, and that at any moment he could spot a bear. But suddenly, he hears a noise coming from the bushes and draws his knife, but what appears is only a rabbit. He's confused, thinking it might be a monster, but the rabbit advances and falls. He notices a wound and asks if the rabbit is hurt. Sato is surprised because the rabbit shakes its head up and down as if he understood. He decides to use his healing magic to heal the rabbit. Once this is done, he hides behind a tree and tells the rabbit to be careful. However, it seems that the rabbit is now following him. He tells the rabbit to go away because it's dangerous, but the rabbit refuses. Sato keeps walking away, but the rabbit keeps chasing him, and as the rabbit refuses to stop, Sato asks him if he knows where the big bear is, and the rabbit starts walking off to the side and looks back at him. Sato understands that this means he must follow him, so the rabbit leads him through the forest to the great bear's den. Sato decides to observe the bear's behavior without being seen. According to the book he read, big bears live in group, which seems to be the case. The rabbit is now behaving cutely, asking for a cuddle. So another day has passed, and Sato isn't sure whether he should fill his canteen with untreated water. However, he doesn't have time to think about it. Suddenly, the rabbit appeared and jumped on his shoulder, surprising him. He thought the rabbit had gone away, but it came back. He calls the rabbit a stranger and tells it that they're going to watch the bears again. He looks closely, noticing that there is no change in behavior, and the big bear is sleeping again, while the blue ones are starting to get cute. Sato also finds the rabbit cute, and somehow this mission is allowing him to enjoy himself. However, on the 4th day, Sato feels some pain in his stomach. He regrets drinking the river water, especially as the healing magic doesn't make the problem any better. And while he suffers from the pain, the rabbit appears once again asking for affection, and Sato forgets his pain for a moment. He only recovers on the 5th day, and the rabbit takes him to a small lake. Sato understands that this water is safer to drink. He tries it and says it tastes even better. The rabbit, however, seems to be frightened. Sato wants to know what's wrong, but the rabbit simply starts climbing a tree. Sato is confused and climbs the tree too. Then he realizes that the rabbit is looking at an empty place place. He thinks the rabbit is sensing a monster approaching. But that's strange, because the rabbit wasn't scared when he saw the big bear. He notices that the rabbit is trembling with fear, and then he hears a noise. He looks carefully and sees a huge white snake, and Sato wonders what kind of monster that snake is. He has never seen this monster in his book, and when the snake starts to move away, Sato can sense that the snake is a much stronger monster than the big bear. He feels an intense thirst for blood coming from it, and vows never to go near it again. Over the next few days, Sato was still feeling uncomfortable, but he continued to watch the bear. He thinks their behavior has never changed, and for some reason, he feels calm when he looks at. However, he knows that if he doesn't kill the big brown bear, he won't be able to return home, and with that thought, he decides that tomorrow is the day he must do it. However, the next day is filled with rain, and Rabbit tries to convince Sato not to go, but he says he has to. At most, he decides to wait until the rain stops. After a few hours, the rain finally stops, and Sato comes forward promising to turn the big bear into mincemeat. Rabbit jumps on his shoulder, but there's no stopping Sato from going home. After reaching the bear's den, Sato prepares his knife, while Rabbit jumps off his shoulder. Sato then enters the nest, but is faced with two dead bears. He wonders what happened, and thinks that Rose is going to kill him, because something killed the big brown bear before him. He looks closely and notices some bite mark. He realizes that it was that huge snake that did it. However, the snake didn't eat them, which means it did it for fun. Sato then hears a noise coming from some rocks and is startled, and when he looks closely, he sees a small bear coming out. The bear tries to wake up its mother, but is unsuccessful. Seeing this, Sato thinks about how much he hates to lose. He never wanted to admit defeat to Rose, but his prey had already disappeared and his current determination had come to nothing. The teddy bear begins to cry when he realizes that he will no longer be able to play with his mother, and Sato decides to leave, promising the teddy bear that he will take revenge for him. The teddy bear hears him leave, sniffs the ground and heads off in another direction. Meanwhile, Kazuki and Suzune go to visit Sato, and are told that he has been training in the forest for the last few days. Kazuki thinks that 10 days is too long, but he is told that not even the two heroes can go against Rose's order. As they walk away, Suzune tells Kazuki that he seems very excited when it comes to Sato, but he asks her if she isn't worried. She replies that despite their worries, they should trust Sato and Rose. Back in the forest, Sato is making a spear with a piece of wood, and after stretching a bit, he makes up his mind and asks the rabbit to take him to the snake. The rabbit is worried, but he tells the rabbit to just take him there and then leave. After a long walk, they manage to find the snake, but Sato sees the teddy bear trying to fight it off. He surprises the bear and tries to throw his newly forged spear at it, but the snake tries to eat his head. He manages to avoid it and stabs its eye out. The snake uses its tail to push him against a tree, but he uses his heel to recover and stand up. He then draws his knife and attacks the snake. Sato knows that he must use his blind spot, which is his right eye, to attack the snake. He dodges an attack and uses his speed to run towards the snake while it recovers. However, the snake uses its tail to attack him. He dodges, but the snake manages to bite his arm. He screams in pain, realizing that the snake is biting him, so he quickly uses his magic to recover, and uses his bitten arm to stab the snake. When he is hit, the snake gives up and releases him. However, Sato begins to feel its venom. He doesn't think this is fair, but he already knows a way to heal himself from his experience with river water. He has learned that if an injury is internal, he must use his healing internally. With this, he recovers and attacks again. The snake uses its tail to attack him, but the little bear decides to help and manages to block it. Sato then jumps over the bear and lands on the snake's head. He then punches the snake with his healing magic to knock it down, and then stabs its eye again with his spear. The snake tries to resist, but eventually gives up and stops moving. Sato lies down on the ground and takes a deep breath, happy that he managed to do it. However, the little bear is watching him intently. Sato realizes that he will now become the bear's lunch. However, the bear treats him kindly, and Sato cuddles him, saying that he has succeeded in avenging his family. He tells the little one that he can't cure him now because he used most of his magic to cure himself of the poison. But suddenly, the snake gets up again and looks at them. Sato can't move, and the little one tries to carry him away. However, Sato is too heavy. He asks the bear to run away, but the snake lunges at them. Sato realizes that this is the end and starts cursing Rose. He blames everything on her and calls her an ogre. Then, suddenly, Rose appears in the air and kicks the snake down. She starts cursing the snake, saying that it should have followed the script and died. Sato and the little boy are shocked, and Sato asks what she's doing here, and she reveals that the rabbit called her. Sato is confused, and she explains that this rabbit is her pet, called Kukuru, and she asked it to look after Sato. Sato doesn't believe it, because the rabbit was injured when they met, but Rose reveals that it was all a trick to win his trust. Rose explains that she was always around, just in case, but she didn't expect this snake to appear in the forest. Sato asks what that snake is, and she explains that it's a monster modified by the Demon Lord's army. In fact, Siegfried failed to defeat the snake in the Demon Lord's last invasion, and it ended up fleeing to this region. She doesn't know how the snake managed to defeat the the Great Bear, especially since the kingdom's elite force can't do it. And on finding out, Sato says she's a monster for making him do it. But Rose reveals that she never expected him to win that fight. She just wanted him to gain experience. But things got interesting, and she wanted to see what he would do. He complains that he almost died, and the little bear also comes to Sato's defense. Rose notices that the little bear likes Sato, and he explains to her that the little bear has lost his parents, and now he is his only companion. On discovering this, Rose praises Sato, and says that the bear will go with them, but he will have to carry Sato on his back. The bear takes Sato, and Rose picks them both up with one hand and carries them back. She tells Sato that he has passed the exam, and that he now has the right. Sato is confused, but she reveals that although he hasn't finished his training, he has already earned the right to stand beside her on the battlefield. She says that he already has everything: a body that can withstand pain, physical strength, and most importantly, an indomitable spirit, which is something that is lacking in the other healers in his squad. She tells him to be proud, and that maybe they'll still make it back in time. Sato is confused by this idea of getting back in time, but she reveals that the Demon King's army is preparing to attack. Sato is shocked to hear that a new war is starting, and Rose confirms it. He says that he will be taking care of the wounded on the front line alongside her, and that means he now belongs to the advance guard. Sato is shocked and asks what happens to the rest of their members, and Rose explains that they only have 2 more healers, but they have different functions. Sato isn't sure if he can do the same as Rose, but she replies that they still have time to make him stronger. Meanwhile, the Demon Lord asks a so-called subordinate about their plan to invade the kingdom of Linger. She confirms that everything is on track, and that everyone is ready to move in soon. The Demon Lord is relieved and says that she will be the only one to command their army. He mentions that they failed in the last invasion, and warns her that she must give her all while avoiding death. She gives him some hope, and he dismisses her. While walking back, another guy notices that Mila is nervous. She tells him to do his job instead of teasing her, and calls him Dr. Monster Maker. When she says this, he reveals that his work is going very well. After all, he has managed to complete a new prototype monster modified by Demon. He asks her if she wants to see it, and she follows him. She then sees a huge snake, similar to the one Sato fought before. The demon is enthusiastic about this monster and reveals its name. However, she mentions that this is the same name he used for his last prototype, which disappeared during the attempt to invade Linger. He says that the snake that was defeated and escaped is in the past, but that this new snake they're seeing is much stronger, and it makes him proud. Even so, Mila doesn't care, because she knows that in Linger there is someone who is stronger than Sigurd's. The man is confused and asks if she's talking about the kidnappers, and she confirms by saying that they never fight, but are still on the battlefield carrying the wounded back to the rear at insane speed. The man says that they only minimize casualties, but Mila explains that the head of the kidnappers is a healer, and such a person not only has insane healing abilities, but is also an excellent fighter. That person is Rose, the strongest person in Linger, and the kidnappers are the healers who save people very quickly. Mila hates Rose deeply, because Rose fought against her master, and he didn't even live to tell her what happened. Unfortunately, as she's going to command the army, she can't fight. Even so, Mila walks away, saying she'll leave the fight to the immortal black magic user. Back at Sato's, he's happy because he missed his bed. He was also missing Tongue's snores. However, he needs to wake up and do his thing. He gives the bear some fruit for breakfast and notices Rose's rabbit nearby. However, Sato says he can't forgive him for taking advantage of his innocence. The rabbit then behaves cutely, and Sato almost falls into the trap. He then continues to give the bear more fruit and calls it Blue Ring. It's at this moment that Rose arrives, repeating the same name, and asks if that's his name. Sato confirms by saying that he combined the words blue and bear. Rose is shocked to hear this, but concentrates on saying that she has told the king about the bear, and that it will now be the property of the rescue team. Sato is confused by this, and she reveals that the bear also needs to do his duty if he wants to stay here. The little one is startled by her smile and hides. It turns out that from now on, Sato must not only run with weights, but he must also run carrying the bear. She tells him to think of the bear as someone who needs to be carried. She orders him to start running, and he follows her order. In fact, Sato just sees it as more weight training than usual. He thinks that all he needs to do is control his healing magic properly. However, Rose shouts that he's too slow, and that the wounded will die if he runs that slowly. Sato complains, but picks up the pace. Suddenly, Tong comes out of a bush and tries to punch him, but Sato dodges. Another guy runs towards him, but he dodges him too. He thinks they're crazy and asks what they're doing. The thugs chase him and explain that this is a simulation of what will happen on the battlefield. Sato tries to run as fast as he can, but everyone shouts spots that there are more people hiding. Even so, Sato speeds up and keeps running. The others throw balloons of sticky water from the trees, forcing Sato to run while holding his breath. And after 3 hours of running, the hours go by. And in the 4th hour, Sato finally uses his magic, but he feels strange. Just then, the rabbit comes out of a bush and smiles. However, Sato panics and jumps on it, thinking that the rabbit is doing it again. Over time, Sato feels even stranger and finally faints, without knowing why. He is confused, as he should be able to last at least half a day. Rose then appears, explaining that this will be his endurance on the battlefield. Sato is confused, but she explains that the human body also gets tired of feelings like anxiety, fear, and frustration. That's why he ran out of energy faster than usual. Sato asks what he can do, but she heals him and tells him to get used to these emotions. She tells him that he must develop his mental strength and situational awareness. She then walks away and orders him to run through the town and around the castle during the afternoon. Sato is confused, but follows these orders. However, all the citizens are shocked to see a guy running through the streets with a blue grizzly bear on his back. Sato already knew this would happen, even though Blurim is a very well-behaved monster. Suddenly, people start smiling when they discover that Sato is also part of the rescue team. Just then, Blurim smells something and wakes up. The bear points ahead, and Sato goes to the fruit stand. He doesn't have any money to buy it, but he asks what the fruit is called. The old lady calls them pearls. Sato then asks her why people aren't freaking out while he's carrying a monster on his back. The lady replies that it's because he's part of the rescue team. She talks about his uniform and reveals that his companions also run around the city all the time. Sato thinks about it and confirms that someone would get used to it after seeing all those scary bandits running around. Before he left, the lady gave him a piece of fruit, and Blurim ate it. Sato then continues on his way, and a little girl asks the lady if he belongs to the rescue squad. The lady confirms and asks why she wants to know. The girl simply ignores the question and looks at him. Sato now plans to make a quick stop at the castle to visit Suzune and Kazuki. However, a boy sees him passing by and starts running after him. The boy chases him while asking Sato to stop, but he keeps falling behind. Sato only notices when the boy falls to the ground and asks if he's okay. Sato heals the boy and asks what he wants. Then he reveals that he wanted to say hello because he is also part of the rescue team. Sato is confused, and the man in front of him introduces himself as one of the 2 healers. After hearing the whole story, Floor is amazed to learn that Sato was summoned by mistake along with the other heroes. Sato says he'd almost forgotten about it because he's been training hard every day. Floor thinks that Sato is amazing to have been able to keep up with Rose's training, as he and his sister couldn't. Sato asks if his sister is a healer, and Floor confirms by saying that she is 5 years younger and that they run a clinic in the city to heal people with magic. However, Sato is confused as to why Floor is collapsing at that moment. The man then explains that he is no good at using healing magic on himself. He can only use his magic to heal others. Sato is surprised that there are other types of healers, and Floor confirms it, saying that they are all part of the rescue team, so when necessary, they help and heal everyone. Hearing these words, Sato remembers when Rosalie said that he would go to the front line and heal the wounded alongside her. He gets worried and asks the brother in front of him what their role is on the battlefield. He then says that those with the bandit face take the wounded from the front line, while he and his sister heal them. In short, they are the rear guard support. However, Sato reveals that he is going to the front line with Ro. The brother is shocked, and Sato asks if someone like him can do that. In response, he says that the ones in most danger are heroes and knights. He tells Sato that if a healer gets hurt, he'll probably die, so healers who aren't good in combat like him just stay in the background. But Sato is different. He can move to the front line, and that means several people will be saved by him. However, he reveals that this job is difficult and dangerous, and he knows that Rose would never take someone she doesn't fully trust. Sato reflects on the war and worries about his friends. Flu then gets up to go back to the clinic, and Sato decides to continue his training. Before leaving, Flu asks Sato not to hate Rose, saying that she just doesn't know how to measure her word. However, Sato tells him not to worry because he never hated her. In fact, he also has some words he wants to say to her. Sato then starts running, and Flu feels relieved because Rose has finally found the person she's been looking for. Suddenly, Flu's sister comes to complain, asking if he's dead or something. He tells her that she's not so fragile, but the look in her eyes says otherwise. He then tells her that he has just met someone very interesting, and she becomes curious about him. Her brother tells her that she will soon meet him, and already predicts that she will like him very much. Meanwhile, Sato arrives at the castle and asks permission to enter with the bear. The guard allows him in, which completely confuses Sato, who asks how he can bring a monster into the castle. The man replies that Rose has authorized entry, so he must go on. Arriving at the training camp, Sato observes Suzune training against 3 soldiers. She gets distracted when she sees him and asks about the bear. Then they take a break, and Sato tells her all about surviving in the forest full of monsters. However, she is much much more excited to caress Blurim. Sato tells her to go ahead, but Blurim slaps her hand away, completely refusing her affection. Sato apologizes, saying that Blurim is too shy, but she's still excited. She asks Blurim to become her friend, but he bites her hand when she tries to cuddle him. Sato says that this could mean that Blurim thinks she's a bad person, but he bites her hand too, and in the end they put the cuddling idea behind them. Sato then notices the wounds on her hand, and she says it's because she's been training seriously. Then he takes her hand and heals her, surprising her with his incredible skill. The girl thinks he's come here to visit her and runs off, but Sato says he's come to see them both. She feels rejected and reveals that Kazuki left the kingdom with Siglis to gain experience in fighting monsters. As they walk, Kazuki asks Siglis if it's true that the Demon Lord's army will start invading them soon. Siglis confirms, mentioning that the demon army will be much stronger than last time, which is why they have summoned Suzune and Kazuki, as they are the heroes who can boost their soldiers' morale. However, Kazuki is still unsure and hesitates. Even so, he promises to give it his all, but then everyone stops because there is a pack of wolves in front of them. They prepare for battle, and Kazuki finally makes up his mind. On the other side, Sato is impressed by Kazuki's progress, but he wonders if his friend will be alright. Suzune replies that his training will only last a few days, but when he returns, she will be the one doing the training. Sato teases her, saying that she will probably enjoy every moment of becoming overpowered in another world. However, she complains because Sato isn't worried about her at all. After the conversation, Sato decides to continue his training. He thinks of his friends doing their best for the upcoming battle, and if they fight, he also wants to help in some way and not be the only one left behind to be protected. He thinks that in his previous world, he only wanted to do the things he couldn't do. However, he's not like that anymore. Now he wants to do what he can, which in this case is to help everyone with their cure. After returning home and putting Blurim to sleep, Sato meets Rose. She asks him if his body has got used to the training, and he replies that it has, but he wants to train more. Hearing these words, Rose tells him to go on and leaves, but Sato interrupts her to say that at first he wasn't thinking of taking part in the war, but today he has changed his mind. He doesn't intend to fight or even kill his enemies, but he will do anything to save everyone, as he is a member of the rescue squad. Rose smiles and for the first time slams a fist into his chest, telling him to be proud of saving people. Hearing these words, Sato smiles and calls them Cap. However, the next day, Rose wakes him up by putting a heavy backpack on him. He says that the king has ordered him to join Suzune's training. On the way, Sato asks Rose why he had to join his friend's training. Rose then explains that he should also take part in the training with Kazuki. However, Kazuki didn't want him to go because he had just returned from the forest. Now, the king sends another request, which he can't refuse. She tries to calm him down, mentioning that he's only going to act as a healer, and Rose's recommendation is that he simply play his part for the next 3 days and go home. In the end, he finally leaves for the training, and Suzune is happy that Sato is going with her. She thinks he only brought Blurim along to help them bond better. However, Sato explains that he only brought Blurim because Blurim hates everyone else, and only he can contain him. She starts to complain about his lack of empathy, but Blurim is a wild bear, so it's normal for him to be like that. Before leaving, she introduces the rest of her group, and Rose gives Suzune a warning, asking her not to be reckless just because Sato can heal her wounds, because if someone dies, Sato won't be able to do anything. Suzune takes her advice seriously, and Rose realizes that she will be fine since she was trained by Cygnus. She then turns to Sato and reveals that she has no advice for him. He is confused and she mocks him, asking if he has a problem with it. Sato replies that he's fine, and she continues. However, he is suddenly surprised when Suzune talks about how strong Rose is. However, she refuses to explain when asked about it and starts to move. Meanwhile, at the castle, the princess is worried about Kazuki, wondering what he's doing. He explains that he's practicing his sword skills, but she mentions that he's just arrived and should have rested, but he dismisses the idea of resting any further, explaining that he's had a great night's sleep and can get back to training. She thinks he's trying too hard, but he flexes his muscles to show that he's fine. The princess realizes that she is holding his arm and becomes very shy, so she leaves. Back in Sato's group, Suzune talks about some of the things Kazuki learned during his training, and Sato didn't expect Kazuki to be so exhausted, but he tells Suzune that the experience must have been worth it. He fought tons of monsters in the darkness of Lingya, and Suzune reveals that that's where they're going now. On hearing that name, Sato remembers the time he was watching Blurim and his family. He wonders if Blurim misses his home, but this moment is interrupted by Suzyun asking if the bear will wake up soon. She thinks this is the perfect chance to cuddle the bear, since it won't bite her. She tries to do so, but Sato slaps her hand away. She is initially confused, but tries to stroke the bear several more times, all of which are denied by Sato's slap. Finally, she asks what he's doing, but he replies with the same question. She takes the chance to flirt with him, saying that he's become a sadist and is enjoying being patted by her, but he has no idea what she's saying. Blurim then wakes up, and Sato tells him to walk on his own. The bear can barely walk properly because he's sleepy, and Suzyun thinks this is his chance. She tells Blurim to get on her back, and she'll carry him. Sato tries to stop her, but Blurim lies down on his back. Suzyun is happy to have finally touched Blurim's fluffy fur, and tries to get up. However, she falls flat on her face because the bear is too heavy. Sato helps her up, and they continue walking, while he tells her not to hurt herself outside the battle. She thanks him for healing her, but they are forced to stop because the wizard senses several presences in front of them. The knight warns them to be prepared to fight monsters, but the wizard realizes that something is wrong. Then some bandits appear from the bushes, as they can't ambush someone who already knows about their presence. The bandits then start doing what they do best, threatening everyone to hand over their possessions. The knight refuses, prompting the bandits to tell him the size of their group. Sato is confused as to what is going on, as these thugs are not at all intimidating. He notices that Suzyun is tugging at his shirt, and she reassures him that everything is fine. Still, she's a fantasy world freak, so she's excited to see real bandits. Mentioning that she's never seen one before, Sato thinks she's clearly out of her mind. But the Blurim that was in the background appears at Sato's side. The bandits start to panic because they never expected someone to tame a blue grizzly bear. However, one of them tells the others to take a closer look. Because it's only a cub, the bandits now think that this is a perfect chance to catch a bear and skin it. Sato is furious at these words, but Suzyun attacks the bandits before they can do anything. Sato is impressed that she was able to control her power to simply knock out the bandits with a bolt of lightning, and she explains that she practiced a lot to make her power perfect. The bandits decide to advance, thinking that Suzyun won't be able to use her magic if they get close. However, Suzyun electrocutes them as they run. Sato just cheers her on, and at the same time compares her to a human stun gun, naming her Taser-chan, but suddenly the wizard senses something new. Seconds later, a horde of wild boars rushes past them. The knight is confused because these monsters are supposed to live deep in the forest. At that moment, Sato is almost hit in the back, but Blurim saves him. Suzyun tries to electrocute the monsters, but another boar runs towards her. Sato tries to protect her, but they are hit and both are thrown into the air. They begin to fall deep into the forest, but Sato uses his body to protect her from the fall. He casts his healing magic, while receiving strong blows from the tree branches. In the end, they fall into a river and back to the surface of the water. Sato realizes that this is the same river he fell into when he arrived in the forest. He knows it's a waterfall ahead and tells Suzyun to take a deep breath. However, he fails himself. Fainting from the exhaustion of so many consecutive healings, Suzyun tries to wake him up and carries him to the shore, saying that she will pay this debt. A while later, Sato wakes up saying that he's fine and that this is very embarrassing. She gets all shy and pushes him away after realizing that he has woken up. Sato then uses his magic to heal her wound, and Suzyun apologizes for putting him in that situation. He doesn't mind, saying he's glad they at least got into it together. He looks around and says he didn't expect to be back so soon. He then explains that Rose left him here to train, and that this forest is full of monsters much stronger than those Jabali. Sato then sits down to check his equipment and decide how to act from now on. Suzyun asks if it isn't better to flee the forest because of the monsters, but Sato reveals that it's about to get dark and that the weather indicates rain, so it's better to find a place to camp and not leave until the next day. She asks him if he knows of a safe place, but he replies that he has slept on a tree branch, but perhaps it wouldn't be much fun for her to sleep like that. Sato then finds a cave and decides to camp there, saying that as well as protecting them from the rain, this cave is much better than going deeper into the forest. He then advises her to take off her wet clothes, and she shyly tells him not to peek. However, after noticing Sato's silly face, she realizes that he didn't even think to look at her. Now, in a survival situation, Sato decides to use Suzyun's skills to fish and light a fire, and he's very happy about this because he didn't have a fire last time. However, he realizes the situation Suzyun is in, and he apologizes for the situation, but she is more interested in checking out his body than he is in checking out her body. Suddenly, she looks up and sees some monsters. She gets excited, and Sato calls them poisonous monkeys, explaining that he has read read about them, the monkey's duck, and he tells her that the monkeys are friendly, but that she could be poisoned if she touches them. But she replies that she has already been poisoned by the cuteness of the monkey, but the little monkey bites her finger, and she faints, forcing Sato to heal her. Meanwhile, at the palace, the king is informed by the magician's relative that Sato and Suzune are missing. Kazuki wants to know more about it, and the king explains all the information he has at the moment. The king says that he didn't want to reveal this to Kazuki, but the princess forced him to do so. Kazuki asks if they have already sent out a search party, and the king reveals that they will leave tomorrow. Kazuki thinks it's too late and decides to leave on his own right now. However, Rose appears and tells him to stop. She asks him not to worry because Sato is with Suzune. She explains without winding them up that Sato won't die so easily. So if Sato is okay, Suzune should be safe. Kazuki is shocked to hear this. After all, Sato is a random guy who came here by mistake and was only given healing magic. And talking about Sato himself, he's having a lot of fun because it's getting much easier to survive in the forest with Suzune by his side. She gets annoyed at this because he's literally calling her camping gear, but she decides to let it go. And as they're both tired, they decide to sleep, but they'll do it in shifts, starting with her. She rejects him, saying that he should go to sleep first because he used his healing magic on her. He accepts the deal and lies down, and while she's awake, Suzune looks at Sato and asks if he's asleep. He reveals that he's still awake, and she asks how he feels about being summoned to this world. She asks if he thinks about going home someday, and Sato says that's a difficult question because he wants to go back to his home. However, he has several reasons for staying in this world. Suzune then reveals that she doesn't want to go back, but is surprised that he hasn't asked her why. He asks if he should really ask her that question, and she confirms. Then before he can ask her, she reveals that it's because she likes this world more than theirs. She says that in their world, there's nothing else for her to do, so she's willing to throw away her family, friends, or who she was before just to stay here. She reveals that she's been waiting her whole life for this moment, and for her this world is a chance to free herself. She's very happy because in this world there is nothing to learn. However, Sato reminds her that she is one of the heroes trapped by saving this kingdom, but for her this plot is quite amusing. Sato then says that thanks to this world, he has managed to change from being an ordinary, passive guy, so he thinks he is not so different from her, and Suzune is impressed by his point of view, and Sato continues, saying that when they arrived in this world, he didn't want to hold them back, which is why he accepted the training with Rose, but now he is determined to protect her, Kazuki, and everyone else in this kingdom. And Suzune also says that she wants to protect this place as a hero, and as they confirm their determination, Sato says that they will save the kingdom together and have completely forgotten their old world. Suzune is amused and says that Sato has grown a lot since he arrived here, not just mentally, but his body is very hot. Sato also reveals that he likes her body, and that in their world, he always thought of her as a perfect girl with no flaw. However, Suzune is shocked because he's never treated her as if she were a perfect girl, but she reveals that she doesn't care because she'd rather be close to him than admired from afar. And after turning as red as a tomato, Sato decides to hide his face and go to sleep. The next day, they walk through the forest, and Sato asks her to be careful. They hear a noise and prepare for a fight, but it turns out to be just Blurim, who quickly jumps on Sato. After recovering, their rescuers say that they were looking for them, but Blurim suddenly started running away. They followed him thinking that the bear would lead them to them, and it really worked. Suzune tells Blurim that he did a good job, but the bear is smelling something and walks in a certain direction. He stops at a place, and Suzune asks where they are. Sato explains that this was Blurim's home before his parents were killed by a giant snake. Sato feels sad for the bear, but Blurim approaches him, leaving them confused. Sato thinks that Blurim wants to leave, and Suzune is impressed by the fact that the bear has already made up his mind. She explains that Blurim knows that his place is next to Sato, and Suzune tells Sato that it's time to go home. Upon returning, the king welcomes Sato and Suzune. Suzune apologizes for worrying him, but the king says that it is he who should apologize for putting Sato in this situation. Sato doesn't care, and confuses the king by saying that he is used to this kind of situation. Our boy quickly realizes that he has made a mistake and looks at Rose, so he tries to explain himself and lies by saying that he used to explore the forest in his previous world. The king believes this, and decides to ask about his training with the rescue squad. Sato looks at Rose again, as he doesn't know what to answer, and afraid of being brutally raped by Rose. Sato looks at the king and says that his training is very easy. The king is happy to hear this, and Rose smiles at Sato. He starts to panic, and quickly realizes that his mind has been pressed by Rose, and that's why he said that his training was pleasant. Now the king announces that Suzune's training will be changed, and asks her to rest for the day. The two are dismissed, but Rose and Sigli are asked to stay behind. Sato is confused, but is forced to leave. Suzune asks if there is something wrong, and they wonder wonder what they are going to talk about. Since the minister seemed quite worried, Sato out of nowhere comes up with a dumb idea, worrying that he might be fired, and this makes Suzune laugh. But suddenly everyone hears Kazuki's voice. Kazuki immediately complains that Sato is being too casual. After being attacked by monsters and disappearing, Sato apologizes, and the princess explains that Kazuki was desperate and wanted to look for them. Suzune calls him reckless, but Sato says that she is reckless for having petted a poisonous monkey and been bitten. Kazuki is confused and Sato tries to explain, but Suzune stops him. They go outside, and Kazuki reveals Rose's statements that there was no need to worry because Sato was with Suzune. He says that those words calmed him down, but Sato knows that Rose was thinking that he would be in easy mode compared to his training. Kazuki is impressed because Rose trusts Sato completely, yet Sato thinks Kazuki is just a pure and innocent guy, and he puts his hand on his shoulder asking him never to change. After all, only he and Suzune need to be corrupted by this world. Kazuki doesn't understand, but accepts the deal. Suzune, however, starts complaining because Sato has just called her corrupted. Later, Sato and Suzune go out, and the princess comments on how close they seem. Kazuki confirms, saying that they have been getting very close lately. However, the princess corrects him, mentioning that they are very close to him. She reveals that he always notices her happiness when he is with his friends, and Kazuki says that this is obvious, since they were friends before. The princess gets worried and asks if she can also be friends with Kazuki. She mentions the fact that Kazuki calls Suzune by her first name, while he treats her as the princess and not as the person she is. Kazuki notices this, so he takes courage and promises to call her Sylvia from now on. Meanwhile, in the throne room, the king reveals that he interrogated the bandits who attacked Sato's group. In short, the bandits were crossing the plains and noticed fewer monsters than usual, until out of nowhere they were attacked by a herd of wild boars in the forest. The king thinks that the monsters must be fleeing from the plains to the forest. This can only mean that the monsters are fleeing from something that is coming towards the kingdom. Siglis thinks that it is the army of the demon lord, and the king confirms this. Siglis then says that the demon lord underestimated him in their previous battle, but the same will not happen again. He believes that the demon lord will use everything available to capture their kingdom. The king confirms, and asks him to tell all the commanding officers to be prepared to mobilize the troops at any moment. Siglis confirms and starts to walk away. The king then decides to talk to Rose in private. He apologizes for waiting and reveals that he needs to ask her something. He explains that he can't normally assign this mission to the rescue squad captain, but Rose replies that he doesn't need to worry about that. She knows that he wants her to explore and locate the demon lord's army. The king confirms and apologizes for the request. She rejects the apology because she knows that she is the fastest person in the kingdom. She prepares to leave, but the king reveals that he has something else to talk about. He steps down from his throne and asks if she wants to return to her position as battalion commander. However, Rose refuses to do so, saying that she is more to blame than he thinks. The king thinks that she is too hard on herself and says that she was the first healer to be appointed battalion commander. Rose affirms that this is true, and when the king asks her if she has forgiven herself, she denies it, while her eyes fill with rage, and she asks the king how she could forget it. She was forced to accept the death of all her subordinates, and the fact that she can't revive them, and the scar on her right hand will never allow her to forget them. The king tries to convince her that she shouldn't carry this burden, but she replies that it's something she should do, because her subordinates only died because she was full of herself. Yet it made her realize that everything ends when someone dies, no matter how skilled or trustworthy they are. That scar is a punishment that will never let them forget their sin. She reveals that this was the origin of her decision to create the rescue squad, because they don't fight, and their focus is only on saving lives. The king confirms it by saying that they saved many men during the battle 2 years ago. He asks if she hasn't achieved her goal, but Rose reveals that there is another reason for the existence of the squad. The king is curious and asks what the reason is, and Rose reveals that their ultimate goal is to find a subordinate who won't die. The king says that this is something impossible. However, Rose explains that this is the reason for her hellish training. She is looking for someone who can use healing magic, someone who is determined to go beyond their physical limits. And this same person needs to have the determination to never give up. Her dream is a person who has all these characteristics. The king realizes that Usato is exactly like that, and Rose confirms it, saying that he is everything she was looking for. He has insane survival instincts, adaptability, and the will to survive. She mentions that his best trait is that he hates to lose, and the worst is that he can be easily swayed. Yet no matter what she does, he still gets up and faces her. She knows that he will never give up, and reveals that she is determined to make him the strongest healer. At this point, she realizes that she has said too much and apologizes, saying that she will concentrate on her mission, and the king places his trust in her. Later in the evening, Usato finds a letter and asks about her. The squad member explains that Rose left it for him before she left. Usato thinks it's bad news and sits down to open it. He then then finds out that he doesn't have to train the next day, and that he has to deliver another letter to someone. Usato then asks where Rose went, but no one knows. She simply told them she was going out and wouldn't be back for dinner. Meanwhile, the demon lord is trying to make a bridge across the river. The Black Knight sighs, and the commander asks what's wrong, and the Black Knight reveals that he finds it very annoying to see the commander's excitement about all this. The commander gets angry, complaining that this is not the way to talk to his superior, but the Black Knight apologizes, but reminds him that they are literally on the same level, and apparently the commander doesn't care, because she is in charge, and the Black Knight must follow her orders. After being called to attention, the knight apologizes and leaves, asking to be informed when the bridge is finished. The construction of the bridge was going very well, and after confirming this, all the demons expected to start the invasion in 2 hours. But suddenly someone mentions that someone on the other side of the river. She thinks it's just a scout and doesn't care, as it will be too late to return to the kingdom and report what's happening. But suddenly a tree is thrown onto the bridge that was being built. The bridge is completely destroyed, shocking the commander, who doesn't understand anything that's happening. But when she looks closely, she notices Rose on the other side and shouts her name. Rose smiled, and the demons realize that it's not just an explorer, but a soldier who has now managed to delay the invasion by a few days. The next day, Sato follows Rose's map to deliver the letter, but he notices that everyone is staring and commenting on him. He doesn't understand why, as he didn't bring Blurim with him, but everyone is confused as to why Sato is walking instead of running. He then meets an old lady who asks where Blurim is, and if he wants to buy some fruit. Sato says yes, and that he'll get it from her on the way back. He finally manages to find the place on the map and goes inside. Then a girl comes to greet him, and noticing his clothes, she asks if he is the person who has just joined the rescue team. Sato confirms, but she interrupts him, saying that her brother had told her his name. However, every time she tries, she gets it wrong, and then she introduces herself as Yuru Fleur, Orga's sister. Honestly guys, Orga is much easier to say. Calling the guy Fleur is horrible, so from now on the guy's name will be Orga. Well, Yuru welcomes Sato to the clinic, and Sato asks where her brother is. She reveals that he's inside examining a patient, and convinces him to take a look. They watch Orga use his healing magic on a child, and Sato notices that the color of his healing magic is intense and soft, which is the exact opposite of his. Orga finishes healing the boy, who gets up and tells his mother that he's no longer feeling sick. The mother thanks Orga, but the boy asks her why people are watching, and when he realizes that it's Sato, Orga goes over to talk to him. First he thanks him for delivering Rose's letter, but Sato dismisses the thanks, saying that he's always wanted to visit the clinic. Yuru then asks how everyone in the squad is, and he confirms that it's always the same, and she laughs, saying that she misses them. Orga begins to read the letter, while Yuru tells Sato that she and her brother didn't manage to keep up with the hellish training. She still feels bad because Rose tried her hardest to train them, but in the end it didn't work out. Initially everyone was excited, but the training was so hard that they became afraid of Rose. She mentions that Rose was desperate at that moment, and Sato is confused to hear those words. But Yuru says that Rose seems to be very happy now, and the two brothers think that this is because she has managed to find a new punching bag, this time one that doesn't give up. Suddenly someone enters the clinic to ask Orga for help, because someone fell off a roof while fixing it and injured 2 other people. Sato joins the brothers, and they arrive at the scene. Orga thinks that they need to treat them urgently, and asks Sato to take care of someone. They quickly run to their patients, and Sato treats a boy with a broken and bleeding leg. It is at this moment that he realizes that he has only healed his own injuries. However, if the war breaks out, he will have to treat more serious injuries than this in the middle of the battle. He knows that he has trained for this moment, but he's still unsure. Orga realizes this and tells him to calm down. He explains that it doesn't matter who or where he's treating, because he has the power to heal them. He tells Sato to believe in him, and Sato remembers Kazuki talking about Rose believing in him, and so he finally decides to believe in himself. He concentrates his magic and quickly heals the injured man's leg, and on his way back to the clinic, Orga thanks him for his help, but Sato isn't sure he did a good job. Yuru confirms it, saying that the patient was surprised not to feel any more pain, and Orga takes the opportunity to ask Sato to stop by the clinic when he has time and help them. Sato accepts the offer and decides to leave. After saying goodbye, Yuru says that Orga seemed like a very nice guy when he advised Sato. He then reveals that Rose's letter is a summons for them to join the war against the Demon Lord's army. He then explains that Sato has no real experience and can only rely on his current abilities. Yuru realizes that the war is about to start and becomes sad. Meanwhile, Sato manages to get the fruit from the old lady when suddenly he is stopped by a girl with fox ears. He becomes confused and asks if she is lost, and she replies that he is the only person who can change the future. He notices that the girl's eyes are changing color and begins to see some images of war. In these images, the army of the Demon Lord is winning. He then sees Suzune and Kazuki losing their lives to the Black Knight, and then with fright Sato returns to reality, being completely shocked, and the girl asks him to return this favor to her in the future. He returns to the present and tells the girl to wait, and tries to go after her, asking what he just saw. He asks because he saw his friends being defeated in battle. Curious, he wants to ask the girl about it, but unfortunately he loses track of her, and while he's looking for her, the girl is hiding in a building. She's waiting for Sato to do something to change the future, and Sato now asks Thomas, a guard, if he's seen any foxes crossing the street, but the guard tells him that he hasn't. Sato knows that the girl couldn't have gone that far, as she's very small. He gets frustrated at having lost track of her, and this commotion attracts Rose's attention. Thomas runs back to his post when he sees Rose, and Sato isn't surprised, since it's normal for everyone to be afraid of her. This angers Rose, and she covers Sato's face with her hands and hangs him up like a rag doll. Sato screams in pain, and Rose asks him to repeat his statement. Sato tells her he didn't say anything and asks where she's been. She lets him go and says she made a short trip to the border. She wanted to take a look at the Demon Lord's army and found them building a bridge, so she destroyed their bridge and left. Fortunately, the war will take a little longer to happen, all thanks to Rose. Sato then asks if she knows any fox girls, but Rose says she hasn't met any personally. She tells Sato that foxes stay in specific villages and that they usually don't go out because of the kidnappers and bandits on the way. Sato is surprised by this, and Rose explains that human demons are highly prized, not only because of their appearance, but some of them also master rare magic. Sato asks her if that includes showing someone a vision, and she asks what kind of vision. Sato wonders how he's going to explain what he saw. He tells Rose that the vision was like a nightmare showing a future that he hopes will never happen. Rose then tells him that some human demons can use precognition magic, but they are extremely rare. She asks him why he's suddenly interested in human demons, and he says he's writing about it in a book. Sato now wonders if the fox girl is a human demon who can see the future, and now Rose is walking along the path they usually take to get home, and Sato asks her where she's going. She tells him she's going to see King Lloyd and asks him to come back first. Rose introduces herself to the king, and he apologizes for putting her in danger. He thanks her for stopping the enemy's advance, but she tells him that they will be working on a new bridge, which will be completed soon, and as soon as the new bridge is built, the demons will begin their invasion. He decides to inform the soldiers and citizens about the impending invasion. The king orders this to be done, and tells Siglis to inform Suzune and Kazuki that he wants to talk to them before the end of the night. Suzune and Kazuki are informed of the king's summons, and they head for the throne room. Kazuki wonders why they have been summoned by the king, but Suzune knows that they have been summoned because of an imminent invasion. Cilia returns the greeting and greets Kazuki too. Kazuki stutters to answer her greetings because he's embarrassed. She tells them to go and see their father, as he is already waiting for them. Suzune tells him that they'll see her later, so they go off towards the throne room, and Suzune asks Kazuki if anything has happened between him and Cilia. Kazuki denies any interaction with her, and Suzune pretends to believe him. Then they reach the door to the throne room and are allowed in. Meanwhile, Tong is snoring in his bed, and Sato now can't sleep because of the horrible vision he's had. He's not sure he can change it because it was a vision of the future. But then he remembers that the girl told him that he can change that future, and he wonders if he really can stop it from happening. He is now convinced that the girl wants him to change the future, but he has no idea how to do it. Suddenly, a light comes through the window. He looks out and sees some orbs dancing. He is so shocked that he thinks it is a ghost. The orbs suddenly disappear, and he gets out of bed to check the window. He looks out and sees Kazuki waving at him. He goes out to meet him and says he didn't expect him to visit so late. Kazuki apologizes for this and reminds Sato that he has to get up to train. Sato tells him not to worry about it, as he wasn't getting any sleep anyway. Sato then asks his friend why he has such a serious face, and Kazuki tells him that they have been summoned by the king, who told them that they would soon have to fight the Demon Lord's army. Kazuki wasn't surprised, as he had been expecting expecting this kind of news. He told Sato that Suzune was a little anxious to go into battle, but Kazuki couldn't sleep when he imagined himself fighting, so he left the castle to go and see Sato. He tells Sato that he ran away because he's afraid to fight. He tells Sato that when he fought real monsters for the first time, he was really scared, and his legs froze at the sight of monster. The monsters resisted his power formidably, and when Kazuki finally defeated them, he realized that being a hero is about living or dying. He knows that the Demon Lord's army is going to attack with everything it has, and that scares him to death. He knows that the people of the kingdom are counting on him, but he can't bear it. Sato tells Kazuki that he's a special guy, because he always knows what to do, and he's never scared. Kazuki tells him that he gets scared, and Sato tells him that being scared is understandable, because people's expectations have been a burden for him. Sato tells him that he doesn't have to keep living up to those expectations. He tells him that sometimes it's okay to put yourself first. Kazuki asks Sato how he feels about the impending invasion, and Sato tells him that he's going to fight, which surprises him. He tells Kazuki that his goal is to save as many people as possible who will fight against the Demon Lord's army. Kazuki asks if he isn't afraid. Then Sato tells him that he's afraid, but that doesn't change his decision. Kazuki tells him that his decision could lead to his death. He tells Sato that he was dragged here by an accident, but Sato tells him that although he arrived here by accident, he has been through a lot and met people who have accepted him for who he is. He tells Kazuki that he wants to help those people, and Kazuki is obviously one of the people he wants to help. He tells Kazuki that no matter whether he fights or not, he will always be his friend. After hearing this, Kazuki slaps himself to renew his resolve. He tells Sato that he was a fool and decides to fight to protect Sato and Suzune. He tells Sato that even if he can't fight like a hero, he'll still fight because he wants to help his friend. Sato asks if he's sure of his decision, and Kazuki tells him that he can't stand by after seeing that Sato has decided to fight. He tells Sato that he will go ahead and use his fear as motivation to fight harder. Sato asks him if he's sure, and he tells Sato that when he thinks of them fighting by his side, it makes him feel safer. Sato is happy to hear this, and the two decide to fight together to protect the kingdom they all love. Kazuki reveals that he is very happy to be Sato's friend and thanks him for everything. He bids Sato goodnight and starts walking back to the castle, and Sato is happy to have helped. Someone arrives just as Kazuki leaves, but Sato doesn't see. He's about to go back inside, but Suzune teases him about his relationship with Kazuki. Sato asks her to stop playing games because he's very sleepy, but she's surprised that he's not interested in why she came to see him. Sato tells her that he realized that she noticed Kazuki acting strange, so she followed him to see where he went. Suzune tells him that he's right, and that in the end she didn't have to do anything about Kazuki, as he and Sato sorted everything out themselves. Sato tells her that he's still skeptical about letting Kazuki fight, so Suzune grabs his shoulders and asks if she shouldn't fight too, since she's just a cute girl. Sato tells her that she's in a different situation, because unlike Kazuki, who really wants to go back to his world, she's already decided to stay in this world forever. Suzune agrees with him and decides to go back to the castle, as the next day will be very hectic. The next day, the king announces that the Demon Lord's army has been spotted on the border and that they will soon invade the kingdom. He tells his soldiers that the plan is to intercept them as soon as possible. He reminds his soldiers that previously they successfully repelled the Demon Lord. He knows that the demon army may be much stronger now, and that it may not be as easy as before, but they have also become stronger, with two great heroes who have sworn their loyalty to them. He also says that the rescue squad, which was vital to the previous victory, will take part in this operation, so he tells everyone that he's not worried, because he's sure they'll be victorious. He tells the soldiers that the battle will begin the next day, and that they will surely win. The soldiers are excited by the king's speech, and Sator is happy to see it. Kazuki goes to the princess's room to see her, and the maid lets him in. He apologizes to the girl for having visited her unannounced, and she tells him she's glad he came. She knows that he will go into battle, and he tells her that he will leave the next day. She tells him that she will pray for his safety, and he promises to protect the country from the Demon Lord's army. He says he'll get back to her safely, and she wishes him good luck, hoping he'll get back safely. Meanwhile, Sato takes Yururu to see Blurim, and he looks so cute that she really wants to pet him. Sato tells her that Blurim won't let anyone pet him, but she tells him that she's good with animals. She reaches out to stroke him, and Blurim slaps her hand, which surprises her. Sato explains that Blurim doesn't like new people. She tries again, but is rejected. All their attempts are rejected, and she can only wonder why. Her brother tries to carry some luggage into the house, but he is crushed by the weight. Sato rushes to help him. He apologizes for causing him trouble, but Sato tells him not to worry about it. He tells Sato that Yururu is very nervous because it's her first time in battle, so she's trying to cope by interacting with the animal. Suddenly, Tong opens the door and tells him that Katten wants to see him in her quarters. Sato has never been called to her room before, and he wonders if she's finally going to torture him to death, or if maybe he'll get some some bonus points. Sato knocks on Rose's door. She tells him to come in, and Sato goes to her. He asks why she was looking for him, and she tells him that they need to talk. She asks him if he remembers what his role is on the battlefield, and he tells her what his role is. She tells him that he's right, but that they won't stick to this strategy at first. She tells him that Tong and the others will take the wounded to their backline, healing them away from enemy fire. Sato asks her why they won't be on the front line, and she tells him that she doesn't want them to be easy targets, and that at the start of the battle there won't be many wounded. She tells him that when they're on the front line, he shouldn't heal the wrong people. Sato asks if she's talking about the enemy, but she tells him that he shouldn't heal everyone he sees. She asks him what would happen if he healed someone who was still fighting, and he realizes that doing so might only hinder the fighter. She asks him to use his intuition to decide who he will heal. She then pushes a box towards him and asks him to take a look inside. He takes off the lid and sees his rescue squad uniform. Rose tells him that the costume is designed to help him stand out on the battlefield and asks him to put it on. Sato puts it on with great pleasure, and Rose compliments him, saying that he looks very good in it. Rose then warns him again, saying that healers are not immortal and that their lives are not disposable. He tells Rose that he already knows this and assures her that he doesn't want to die in any way. She then tells him that talking is easy, but she has seen people say those same words and lose their lives in battle. She tells him that his life is also important and must be saved, even though he is a member of the rescue squad. She tells him that if she sees him trying to kill himself, she will take his life before the enemy does. Sato then promises to save himself and everyone around him. She then asks him not to forget her own words, and he thanks her. Soon after, Sato leaves the room and remembers his vision. He doesn't know if it was from the future, but he knows he can't let Kazuki or Suzune lose their lives in this battle. Now we see the army heading for the battlefield. Amako isn't very happy that the trip is taking so long, and Tong tells her that they have no choice because they have to go far away from the castle to fight the demon. Amako understands what he means, but Orga doesn't seem too happy about the trip either. Sato asks Rose to tell him about the demon. She tells him that demons are demi-humans with exceptionally large horn. At first glance, they look like humans, but they are superior in strength and magic. She tells him that the demon commanders are very powerful, but the ordinary demon soldiers are weak. She asks if the idea of facing demons scares Sato, but he says he doesn't see a problem with it because he knows someone much scarier than demon. Rose is impressed by how far he's come, and Sato tells her that he's doing everything he can to prove her wrong. This infuriates Rose, and Sato raises his hands thinking she's going to hit him, but this time she doesn't retaliate to his taunts. Rose somehow feels nostalgic as she remembers her previous team. Then we go back 5 years and see Rose walking towards the king's hall. The king was addressing the soldiers and told her about the demons that had been seen near the city. He tells them that it's only a matter of time before the demons attack someone. He decided to assign guards to the merchants crossing the forest in their cart. He tells them that the guards will be assigned to soldiers below the rank of general. He also warns everyone to flee if a fight breaks out, as the demons are stronger than the human. After the meeting, Siglis asks Rose what she thinks the demons are planning. She tells him she has no idea, but thinks they are preparing for an invasion. Siglis wonders if the demons have the means to do this, and she tells him that there is a possibility. Siglis tells her that he will prepare his troops to mobilize at any moment, but she tells him that this would be a waste of time. He tells her that they need to be able to mobilize instantly, and she tells him that he's too rigid. They go their separate ways, and oddly enough, Rose decides to follow his advice. Just then, one of Rose's subordinates calls her. Her name is Al, and when she calls Rose, Rose doesn't answer because she's lost in thought. Al keeps bothering her, and Rose loses her temper. She hits the girl and tells her to be quiet. The girl complains that she almost cracked her head open, but Rose tells her to be quiet when she sees other people thinking. The girl realizes how evil Rose is. She tells Rose that she didn't think the demons would show up, and this only makes Rose hit her even harder. Rose tells the girl that she shouldn't be listening to confidential information, and warns the girl that she should follow the rules. Al asks what the demons are up to, and Rose tells her that nobody knows. The girl tells Rose that all they have to do then is drive the demons away, but Rose warns her not to underestimate the demons. The girl tells her that she's not underestimating them, but Rose isn't convinced. She tells Rose that she has improved a lot recently, and Rose decides to supervise her training. Al tries to talk her out of it, saying he doesn't want to keep her busy since she's now a commander, but her attempt to escape doesn't seem to be working. So they arrive at the squadron headquarters, and everyone greets Rose. They also greet Al, who in this case is a vice captain. They notice that Al is pale and wonder why. She tries to hide the fact, but Rose tells them that Al is going to lead them all, and they get very angry with Al. They think that Al said something to Rose so that she would win the leadership, but Rose tells them that this is her gift to them because they are being very negligent. They continue to mock the girl, and Rose Rose leaves without caring. Al begs her to intervene, but Rose tells him it's none of her business. After a week, the king calls Rose for a private meeting, and they meet on the balcony. He tells her that demons have been attacking other monsters in the territory. He tells her that eyewitnesses saw a group of demon soldiers trained to commit the act. Rose is surprised that the attack was planned and coordinated. She becomes suspicious, and the king tells her to find out the reason for the demon's action. He authorizes her to use force if necessary. He is sure that she will not act rashly unless it is necessary, and she thanks the king for the trust he places in her, and promises to deliver the king good results. Later in the day, she tells her squadron that they are going on a certain mission. She tells everyone that they will be leaving the next day. One of the soldiers then asks how many demons would be waiting, and she tells him that around 30 have been sighted. One of the soldiers says that fighting 30 demons will be problematic, and Ao tries to cheer up the squad, but they are still angry with her for making them train harder last week. She tells them that the training has made them well-toned for the mission, but they throw various utensils in her direction. Rose decides to make her cat stay at home. Her cat can detect monsters, and she knows it could be very useful, but she doesn't want the demons to target it. Ao runs to her side asking her to protect her, and the soldiers keep hitting her. Rose then tells the squad that they need to be in top shape for the mission, so she goes along, and this gets everyone excited, because they know they'll be unbeatable with Rose's leadership. They also know that they don't have to worry about getting hurt, because Rose can always heal them, so they decide to put all their effort into this mission. Ao stirs up the group once again, and this time, thanks to Rose, they're excited. Rose tells them to stop talking dirty, and orders them to start preparing straight away. The next day, they set off on their mission. They search the entire Lingia forest for their enemies, but fail to find any demon. When it gets dark, they make a fire, and Ollie tells them that they should search the west side of the forest the next day. The soldiers know that the terrain to the west isn't very good, so Ollie says they should leave the horses behind. One of the soldiers tells her that they need to prioritize the areas that can be searched with horses, but Ollie says she's sure there's something to the west. The soldiers decide to follow her lead, so she tells them to take turns standing guard while the others sleep. Rose takes the first watch and tells Ollie to get some sleep. While everyone is asleep, Rose notices that Ollie is having trouble sleeping. She offers to put Ollie to sleep, but Ollie doesn't want to be beaten to sleep. She then joins Rose to watch the fire, and then asks Rose why she decided to appoint her as vice captain. She tells Rose that she is average compared to the other soldiers, and knows that she doesn't excel at anything. Rose realizes that the girl believes she isn't qualified for the job, and Ollie reinforces her thoughts even further, saying that Rose doesn't need a vice captain, as she can handle most things on her own. Rose tells her that someone has to do the manual labor, and also says that she is doing very well, because there have been no complaints about her work. Ollie says that's because she's been working hard, and Rose then tells her that if she keeps working hard, she could become the captain. Rose reminds her that she has higher priorities with the king, so if Ollie works hard enough, she could become his replacement. The girl protests, saying that she doesn't want to become a captain because everyone in the squadron could end up taking each other's line. Rose is disappointed by her lack of faith in the squadron, and Ollie says she doesn't want her to leave the squadron. Ollie says that in the past she never followed anyone's orders, and that she always did what she thought was right, even if everyone disagreed. It was then that Rose came into her life, and she was thinking of disobeying Rose, but nothing she tried worked. Every time she disobeyed, Rose put her in her place, and she had no choice but to follow her order. The purple-haired girl at the time decided not to give in to Rose's orders, and endured her hellish training, just to prove that she's not weak. Rose remembers that Ollie suddenly became determined, but she doesn't remember treating her any differently. Ollie says she was motivated because Rose didn't kick her out or turn her back on her. The other captains usually got tired of her and turned their backs on her, but Rose kept facing her head on. Ollie says it was annoying, but she felt happy, and she was convinced that the other soldiers felt happy too. She tells Rose that no one else can be her captain, because no one else understands her like she does. She tells her to grow up and stop depending on her for everything. Ollie is surprised by her reaction, and Rose tells her that she won't choose someone who isn't qualified to replace her. She tells the girl that she didn't choose her as her vice captain for nothing. Rose chose her because Ollie has never given up and has always remained strong, regardless of the situation. She knows that these qualities will motivate the people around her to overcome their limits, so Rose asks Ollie to just be herself, so that everything will work out. Ollie is shocked that Rose thinks people will follow her example, but Rose is surprised that she doesn't yet know the power of her charisma. Rose tells her that change is the only constant thing in the world, so she tells Ollie that she should just accept change and move on. And finally, Rose asks her to stop worrying about unnecessary things. Rose then decides to get some sleep, and Owl offers to keep watch. Rose tells the other soldiers to get some sleep, and Ollie is surprised that they are all awake. They then tell her that they trust her to lead them in Rose's absence. They tell Ollie that they don't hate her, and that they always listen to her orders when they need to. They ask her not to worry so much, and she is embarrassed, and Rose smiles discreetly. The next day, they climb a small mountain, and a soldier sees signs of the demon. He informs Rose, and they approach to investigate. The soldiers realize that the demons are hunting monsters, and wonder why they are hunting monsters instead of human. Ollie knows there must be a deeper reason behind this, but suddenly they hear a deep growl coming from the forest. Rose tells them to prepare for battle, and they run into the forest. They see the demon, who have just hunted down a monster. They remain hidden behind the bushes, but the head demon senses their presence and informs the other demons. They reveal themselves, and Rose tells the demon not to do anything yet. Rose leaves and asks the demon what he's doing in their territory. The demon tells her that he doesn't like her mission, but that it benefits them in the long run. She asks him for the details of his mission, but he doesn't reveal them. She tells him that he can avoid a fight if he leaves, but he gets annoyed at her arrogance. The demon can see and sense that Rose is strong, but can't let her go because she already knows too much about their mission. So the demon vows to take their life. Rose puts him in charge of the squad and prepares to face the head demon. The demon knows that only one of them will make it out alive, and Rose challenges him to try and take her life. They engage in battle, and Owl leads the other soldiers against the lesser demons. The demon uses wind magic to send blows at Rose, but she only dodges. She approaches him and tries to punch him, but his shield blocks her blow. The demon is surprised that she managed to dodge his attack, and tries to use the power of conversation, but Rose quickly shuts him up. He blocks the blow, but she follows up with another. Rose suffers a cut and leaves her team to take care of the demon. The demon tries to hide and launch a sneak attack, but Rose finds him. She throws a huge tree at him. As he runs away, she throws several more, but he still protects himself. She throws another tree at him, but he gets through it. Rose continues to attack, but his wind shield blocks all her attack. He is impressed by her strength and tells her that she is the most powerful human he has ever fought. Suddenly, he surrounds her with wind blades, but she passes through the attack, and he is surprised to see that she can use healing magic. She attacks him again, but he blocks. He realizes that this woman is a one-man army, and out of respect, he decides to introduce himself as Nero. He summons his sword from the abyss and swears to finish Rose off. Rose tells him she's going to beat him up before that happens. Thus, a fierce battle between the two begins. Rose's soldiers think the demons are too powerful, but they manage to subdue some of the demons while defeating the others in the name of their captain. Rose is still engaged in a fierce battle with Nero. He tries to wound her with his sword, but she blocks it and jumps back to put some distance between them. She sees that the demon's sword is imbued with a curse, so she decides to do her best not to be hit by it. Nero rushes towards her, but she blocks his attack and counters with a punch. She throws another punch that sends him flying towards the demon. Rose follows him, but is surprised to see him standing on the ground. She knows that her punch didn't have much effect, so she orders him to get up. The leader of the demons is furious because his monster hunting expedition has gone wrong, and the sight of his soldiers' lifeless bodies gives him no pleasure. He decides to praise Rose's soldiers for their courage and confesses that they are the most powerful opponents he has ever faced. Rose thanks him for the compliment, but he tells her that humans no longer have heroes who wield exceptional power, which surprises her. Rose wonders if the demons thought they would be able to win because humans no longer have heroes to protect them. He says that he did, but that his opinion has changed. He realizes that humans like her could become the biggest obstacle preventing the demons from achieving their ultimate goal. Rose asks what their ultimate goal is, and Nero tells her that their dream is to make the era where demons live in fear of humans end soon. He tells her that soon the Demon King will appear again. He tells her that the Demon King will be cruel and merciless to humans, but will remain merciful and benevolent to demons. After saying this, his body becomes covered in a red aura, which surprises Rose. He tells her that the Demon King has promised to bring victory to them, but that he has to take her life so that the king can bring peace to his kind. The demons are now no longer afraid of losing their own lives in order to win. One of Rose's soldiers strikes a demon with his sword, but the demons don't let themselves be affected by this, and while this is happening, Nero says that the demons will drag them to their deaths with them. Rose tries to run to help her subordinates, but Nero starts attacking her. One of the demons kills one of Rose's soldiers to the surprise of the others, and Rose is also stunned. They wonder how the soldiers manage to move after being knocked out. The demons start knocking out the soldiers one by one, and they realize that the demons no longer care about their lives. One of the soldiers tries to calm the others down, but they are too scared to listen. The demons keep knocking down the soldiers, and Rose realizes that she won't be able to help them in time. Nero then tells her that she'll have to turn into a real demon to defeat him, and he was doing just that, forcing his men to take their own lives, and at the same time, he was distracting Rose and putting his soldiers in a tricky situation. Rose runs up to him to try to get him out of the way, but he dodges her blows and strikes her with his sword. The blow hits her right eye, and Nero tells her that he can predict her movements from a kilometer away. Rose says the blow was just a scratch, but when she tries to use her healing magic, it doesn't work. Nero tells her that his sword nullifies all magic by inflicting a temporary curse at the site of the cut. He tells her that his healing magic won't work on his soldiers. Rose tries to fight Nero, but he keeps dodging her attack. He tells her that she's in no condition to fight because her eyesight is impaired and she's not in an ideal mental state. He tells her he's going to finish her off, and Rose finds herself in a clear moment where she's going to lose her life. She surrenders to her fate, but Al appears out of nowhere and takes the blow for her, which surprises Rose. Rose looks around and sees her soldiers lying lifeless on the forest floor. She remembers when they promised to fight by her side, because she made them look invincible. They had faith that she would be able to heal their wounds, so they promised to try their hardest, but unfortunately she couldn't do anything for them. She wonders why Al didn't run for his life, but Al was convinced that she wouldn't be able to survive even if she did. Rose realizes that she is too weak and that she relies too much on her ability, and then Nero tells her that he will never forget the losses on both sides, and to honor her, he decides to finish her off, but she takes his crimson sword, which surprises him. Rose punches him fiercely in the face, causing him to fall to his knees. She tells him that he can't remember his soldiers because he doesn't know anything about them. She starts punching him wildly, being very angry because he sacrificed his men in a suicide attack and ended up killing his soldiers dishonorably. Her enemy tries to run away, but she grabs him and smashes him to the ground. She tells him that he has no right to empathize with her because he doesn't even value his men. She throws him into the air and punches him before he hits the ground. She throws her crimson sword at him, which traps him in a tree. Then, just as she was about to take his life, a demon girl called Amelia suddenly appears from the forest and offers to help Nero. Nero is surprised, and Rose is surprised that one of his soldiers is trying to save him, just as Al saved her. Little Amelia helps Nero up, and they start to walk away, but Rose stops them. Amelia turns around, and Rose somehow sees her subordinate, Al, in her, so she ends up doing nothing. She finds herself in a situation where she allows little Amelia to take Nero to safety. Rose is very angry at what has just happened, and smashes the floor in frustration. But at that moment, Al whispers her name, and she goes to her subordinate. Rose tells her that she will heal her, but Al knows that her healing magic won't work, as the curse prevents her from being healed. Rose tells her that they won't know until she tries, but when she does, her cure doesn't work. Al tells her not to bother because she doesn't regret what she's done. She was honored to fight alongside Rose, but Rose says she doesn't want to let her go. Al then says that she is proud to have served Rose and to have become the vice captain, and while Al dies, Rose can only be devastated by the death of all her soldiers. Afterwards, Rose returns and informs the king that the Demon King will soon rise, just as Nero said. She tells the king that his monster hunting expeditions have something to do with the resurrection of the Demon King, and as soon as she has finished her report, she decides to make a special request to the king. She asks to be relieved of her duties as battalion commander. The king asks her if that's what she really wants, and she tells him that she no longer feels worthy of being a knight, and so she leaves the throne room. The king watches her limp out of the room, and while she is limping down the street, a couple stops her, asking if she is Captain Rose. She confirms her identity, and they tell her that their son was under her command. They tell her the name of her son, and she remembers him lying lifeless on the battlefield. She gives them the news of his death and says that she was to blame, but they thank her for bringing their son back so that they could see him again for one last time. They tell her that her son used to be a delinquent, but started to cheer up and do good things after joining her squad, and this surprises her a lot, and it made them feel indebted to her, because even though her son died, he had a decent life. Afterwards, Rose returns to the squadron's base and looks at the flowers planted by its soldiers. She also sees their belongings scattered all over the base, and is overcome with sadness. A month later, Sigris visits her because he knows that the king has visited her. She asks why the king has come all this way to see her, and he tells her it's because she's been alone for a month. She tells him that the king visited her for the same reason he did. They visited her to make sure she wouldn't join the demons. She tells him that maybe it's not so bad, but Sigris approaches her and asks her to snap out of her sadness. She asks him not to worry so much, as it was just a thought that crossed his mind. He lets her go, and soon notices that the wounds caused by the Karmazin sword are healing. She tells him that the curse was only temporary, and he asks why she didn't try to heal her right eye. Rose says that she didn't heal her right eye to pay for her sins of having led her soldiers to their death. She doesn't want to forget that sin, nor does she intend to take her own life after a very important subordinate gave up her own life to save her. She doesn't know what purpose she's going to live for, and even thinks about plotting revenge on Nero, but in the end she realizes that she can't live like this, so she decides to take a moment to calm down and think about what to do. She goes into the dining room and sits down alone. There she tries to relax, but begins to hear the voices of her soldiers. She opens her eyes to see an illusion of her soldiers gathered around the dinner table. She can see that everyone is happy as they enjoy a great meal. Seeing this image makes her feel disappointed at how pathetic she has become. She wonders if she has always been so fragile, and she also wonders how her soldiers would react if they saw her like this. Shio would probably laugh and make fun of her. Al would probably try to give her advice, saying that everything changes with time and that she needs to accept this change and move on. And thinking about Al scolding her makes Rose remember the last conversation they had in the forest. Al asks her if Rose remembers the last thing she said to her. Rose can't remember. Then Al says that Rose is the captain she and everyone else respect. At that moment, all the other soldiers show up, and they tell her to stop whining and remind her of who she used to be. Rose realizes that she was so focused on their deaths that she forgot that her soldiers were always moving forward, regardless of her condition. This brings her to tears, and she promises that this is the last time she will show any kind of weakness. She asks them to forgive her and promises not to stand still any longer. After hearing this, Ao disappears, and Rose finally stands up. She promises to remain the captain they've always admired, and then she finally pulls the bandage off her eye, because now she knows what she has to do. As the war against the Demon King was approaching, and she was sure that countless soldiers would lose their lives, she decided to create an organization to save lives and prevent people from dying. She realizes that she will need 5 people to join her, including 2 healers, and 1 person who is like her, someone who is not just a healer, but who can walk the battlefield and overcome any obstacle they may encounter. Rose knows that if she can find someone like that, she can keep all the soldiers alive. After remembering all this, we see her telling Sato that she's happy to have found him, and he's so surprised that he almost jumps out of the carriage. Rose asks him why he's so surprised, and he says he's surprised by her comment, who never usually compliments him. She realizes that he doesn't know how valuable he is, so she tells him that she can't just replace him with any trained healer. She tells him that Sato is a real clone of her, who will be running around the battlefield, and together they can completely change the course of this war. Sato now finally understands what she means. She tells him that she was looking for a healer like him, being able to do things that only she was capable of, so she is convinced that he will survive this battle. Sato is happy to hear this, and she informs him that they are almost there. On the other side of it, the demons have finished building the bridge and have decided to begin their invasion. Amelia promises to win the battle for her master. She tells her main trump card to run wild as much as he wants, and he tells her that the battle will be short because this time they are much stronger and that their enemies are only mere humans. Amelia warns him not to underestimate the humans because they have healers, and reinforces that even though they seem to be just humans running around, there is a healer among them who is a real monster. To prepare for war, the humans set up a camp with several barricades around it to protect them at night. Some soldiers are chatting, while others are sleeping. Sato leaves his tent in the early hours of the morning to calm down, as this is the day the battle is likely to take place. Suddenly, he is called by Suzyun, and she is surprised to see that he is wearing an outfit that matches Rose. Sato asks what she's doing outside so early, and she tells him she's out for a morning walk. She turns to show him her armor and asks what Sato thinks of it. Sato isn't sure what to say, but she forces him to compliment her armor. She decides to tell him more about the armor, even though he says he doesn't want to hear anything. She tells him that his armor increases his lightning magic and improves his mana flow, and Sato can see that she is very happy with her new armor. Sato asks her if she'd rather wear armor than nice clothes, and she says she'd prefer both, depending on the situation. Sato then asks her if she'd like to wear a cactus, but she says no, because it will poke her body. Sato then jokes that he can poke her in a way that will make her climax. Deep down, she wants to accept this affection, but in the end she mocks him, saying that his toy is too small, and that he would never be able to satisfy her. And when Suzyun starts mocking him too much, Sato calls Kazuki to save him. Kazuki immediately appears and keeps Suzyun away from Sato. Sato is happy that Kazuki has come to her rescue, but Suzyun tells him to let her go. Kazuki tells her that Siglis is calling them to meet, and she says she'll only answer the summons after she's managed to humiliate Sato enough. Sato begs Kazuki to take her away, and he agrees to his friend's request. However, Kazuki says that he can only hold Suzyun for a few minutes, and that she will soon come back to try to grab him. Kazuki then says goodbye to him, and Sato thanks him for saving him. Afterwards, Afterwards, Sato looks at the sunrise and feels a little more anxious about the upcoming battle. Meanwhile, Siglis gives Kazuki and Suzune the scouts' reports. He tells them that the enemy army will arrive soon, and that now they must both do their best to bring good news to the king. They stand outside the barricade, waiting for the Demon King's forces. Suzune tells Kazuki not to try too hard, but he asks her not to worry so much about him, as he'll be fine. Kazuki asks why she's so worried that she has to distract herself with Sato, and she's surprised that he's picked up on it. She tells him that although she's worried, she also feels empowered by making fun of Sato. Kazuki then realizes that she is now very different from what she was in her old world, and she tells him that her old world is gone, and she is happy that Sato accepts her as she is now, and Kazuki didn't know that. He asks her to give him more details about their relationship, but she tells him that now is not the time to share that information. She promises to tell him more when they are safe, and Kazuki realizes that he will only have more details if they manage to survive this battle. Suddenly, something catches their eye in the distance. They keep looking and don't see anything, but they can feel the presence of the demons as they get closer. The army of demons suddenly appears, and Suzune orders the mages to prepare their magic, as they will be making the first move. She asks if Kazuki is ready, and he says he has no choice but to be ready. The mages prepare their staffs, and they all attack the demons with their magic spell. Kazuki is happy that his attacks have wounded the demon army, but when the vision clears, they realize that the army was just an illusion. Kazuki wonders where the real army is, when Siglis suddenly realizes that the demons are coming from a direction where there are no barricades. Kazuki and Suzune run in that direction to intercept the demon army, and Rose orders the soldiers of her healing unit to head for the battlefield and bring back to her all the wounded. She orders them to come back to her alive, and they rush to the battlefield. Rose puts Orga and his sister in the tent with a guard by their side for protection. She asks them to flee if anything bad happens, and then tells Yuzato that the two of them will soon be going to the battlefield, but that for now they will focus on looking after the wounded in the tent. Yuzato wonders if Suzune and Kazuki are alright, and Yuru asks if he's worried about his friends, and he says that he obviously is. Out of the blue, one of Rose's soldiers returns with some wounded people, and they are shocked that there are wounded people, but Rose tells them that they should wait for more wounded people, as they are in a war, and then asks them to heal the soldiers. Yusato looks at one soldier and sees that his injuries are serious. He decides to heal him immediately, and as more soldiers appear wounded, an injured person informs the healers that a large snake has wounded them, and Yusato wonders if this could be the same snake he saw in his vision. He decides to concentrate on healing the soldier first. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, the soldiers are facing a giant snake. They can't believe that the demons have such a large snake at their disposal. They try to keep their guard up against the snake, but they are powerless against it. One of the demon leaders is so disappointed with the humans that he doesn't see the need to be on the battlefield because the humans are too weak. A soldier attacks him from behind, but his sword goes right through the demon's body. The soldier is overjoyed by his blow, but suddenly he sees that his blow has turned against him, and the demon who has been hit is even more disappointed by the weakness of humans. The soldier falls to the ground, wondering how he was wounded so fatally. The demon removes the soldier's sword from his gut, and his wounds are completely healed. The soldier tries to drag himself back to camp and inform the soldiers about the demon and my damage. His tenacity makes the demon impressed, but he soon decides to finish off this mere soldier. Suddenly, the demon is distracted by something, and when he looks back at the soldier, he is no longer there. The soldier is saved by one of Rose's soldiers, and the demon wonders who that bastard is. The soldier remembers when Mila told him about the strong soldiers on the side of the enemy, and realizes that she was talking about soldiers like this, but that doesn't worry him, and in fact makes him very happy, because it means more fun on this battlefield. Suddenly, lightning strikes twice behind him, and he decides to investigate what is happening in that area. On the other side of the screen, more wounded people are brought into the tent, so Rose decides it's time for them to go to the battlefield, and she asks Sato if he's ready. He says yes, as she has trained him to be her right-hand man. She is happy that she doesn't have to worry about him, and Sato is surprised that she worries about anyone, as normally she should be a demon who punishes and mistreats him all day so that he gets stronger. Rose leaves Olga and Yururu in charge of the healing tent, and before leaving, they ask the guard to take care of the healers, so they finally head for the battlefield. As they run, Rose tells Sato that she heard something from a soldier. She tells him about a very powerful demon, which the humans have been calling the Black Knight. He is wearing full armor, and according to the reports, this demon uses a peculiar magic, which no one has yet understood what it is. She warns him to be careful, and Sato remembers the Black Knight in his vision. Suddenly, he looks at Rose, and she asks what's wrong with him, but he doesn't reveal anything, and says that everything is fine. She then decides to give him more advice, as she knows he can't take anyone's life, and Sato says he really can't, as his role is to save lives. She calls him an idiot for saying that in the face of death, herself, but thinking of an idiot like him, she decided to create a special technique. She then reveals to Sato a way to defeat an enemy without killing him, and Sato is amazed by the technique and wonders if she really thought of it just for him. Rose reveals that she did, and he thanks her for the free advice, so they decide to go their separate ways. As Sato runs across the battlefield, he sees several bodies on the ground. He arrives in the heat of battle and sees a demon about to finish off a soldier. He rescues the soldier and quickly heals him, but one of the demons intercepts him. The demon attacks him, but Sato dodges it and keeps running while healing the soldier. Rose, on the other hand, is using the demons as springboards to fly around the battlefield and heal the wounded soldier. Sato does something similar, healing the soldiers and asking them to rest for a while or leave the battlefield if they can't continue. Suzune finishes off most of the enemies on the front line, and she asks the commander to remove the wounded soldiers from the battle while she advances. Kazuki joins her, and they decide to continue clearing the path until they reach the enemy general. Kazuki tells Suzune about a giant snake, and they decide to take it down after completing their objective. Suzune tells the soldiers to follow her, but the Black Knight suddenly marches up to her with some demons. Everyone is surprised by the knight's appearance, and Suzune realizes that the knight is stronger than any other demon they have faced so far. She then tells her soldiers to stay back, but her soldiers pay no attention to her and advance towards the knight. She asks them to retreat, but they attack the knight with their spears. They think they've managed to defeat the knight, and Kazuki wonders why the knight didn't resist. Then Suzune realizes that the knight feels no pain, and the knight attacks the soldier. Suzune asks them to retreat again, but they are all suddenly wounded. Kazuki quickly prepares to attack the knight and avenge all the soldiers, but Suzune hits him, causing his attack to graze the knight's shoulder. Kazuki asks why she stopped him, and she tells him that he shouldn't hit the knight directly. She realizes that the knight is using a damage reflection spell, and Kazuki suddenly hurts his shoulder. This surprises Suzune, as the reflection magic even goes through Kazuki's armor. She asks him if he's alright, and he tells her that it was just a scratch, but it doesn't look like it, because from what I've been able to calculate, he's lost about 100 liters of blood from that cut alone. In a way, Suzune is glad that she managed to discover that the knight's armor reflects any attack, all thanks to the recklessness of Kazuki and the other soldier. The Black Knight tells him that no one has ever discovered his ability so quickly before, but then the knight asks them how they intend to win. Meanwhile, Sato is running across the battlefield when he suddenly has flashbacks of his vision. He tries to use his healing magic to make the anxiety and fear go away, but it doesn't help him. A demon is about to knock him down in his weakened state, but he gets up, keeps running, but stumbles and falls again, just as the demon is about to attack him. The soldier he has just healed saves him. He then asks the soldier the location of the hero, and he tells him that they are on the front line. Sato decides to go to the front line, and hopes that Kazuki and Suzune will still be alive when he arrives. The soldiers are fighting demons on the front line, so Suzune and Kazuki decide to face the knight alone. While the other demons are distracted, Kazuki asks what they can do against the knight, since he reflects their attack, so Suzune tells him her plan. He says her plan is too dangerous, but she tells him that Sato will heal them if anything goes wrong. The knight sees that they are ready to fight him, so the battle finally begins. They run towards him while dodging his attack, and Suzune casts her magic, which hits the ground and obstructs the knight's vision. They run into the dust and attack the knight, but he reflects their attack. Suzune hoped that the knight wouldn't be able to reflect the attacks he couldn't see, but she was wrong. Suddenly, she realizes that the attack on the knight's back wasn't reflected, so she decides to try her strategy again. The knight uses tentacles from his armor to attack them, but they dodge his attacks. Suzune uses her lightning ability to increase her speed, moving quickly behind the knight. Kazuki realizes her plan and decides to blind the knight. However, even though they are doing their best, the knight still feels bored by their presence, but Suzune suddenly attacks him from behind, and the knight is wounded. Suzune then says that the knight can't reflect an attack that he doesn't realize. She asks Kazuki to attack the knight, since he can't reflect the attack, but as soon as Kazuki attacks the knight, he triggers his reflection ability. Suzune is surprised that the knight has deceived her. Thus, the knight injured Kazuki, while his reflection ability injured Suzune. He tells Suzune that he tricked her into believing that he can't reflect attacks that he can't perceive intentionally. He tells her that no one has ever hurt him, and that no one will ever hurt him. Meanwhile, Sato keeps running to the front line, but he's too late. Suzune falls to her knees and apologizes to Sato for losing. When the heroes fall, the demon army celebrates. But before the demon knight can deliver his final blow, Sato rushes in like a madman and lands a punch filled with his healing magic on the enemy. He's startled by the sight of his wounded friends on the ground and wonders if he's too late, but he quickly realizes that they're alive and rushes to heal them. Suzune regains consciousness with a little healing, and the Black Knight wasn't knocked out with that blow. But something different happened, as Sato's blow seems to have had an effect. As they are surrounded by enemies, Sato quickly picks up his friends and starts to to run. The soldiers on his side protect him during his escape, but the Black Knight doesn't intend to let them get away. He almost hits them with his sword, so Sato prepares to run away again. But Suzune tells him that none of their blows worked against that knight, but his blow seems to have been super effective. Sato didn't want to have to fight, but several soldiers are wounded and need healing. He then advances against the enemy and hits back. While the enemy knight is shocked that his power isn't working against him, Sato steps forward and punches the knight right in the face. The battle continues intensely, and Kazuki wakes up and realizes that Sato has saved. He observes the fight and realizes that healing magic seems to be the weak point in this enemy's power of reflection. Sato's blows are powerful, but at the same time as he hits an enemy, he heals him. Soon, the only thing the knight feels is the pain of his blows. Angry, the knight gathers all his power into his sword and prepares for the final blow. Sato does the same, and with only his fist filled with healing magic, he goes through the knight's sword and hits him with all his might. At that moment, the knight loses consciousness and everyone discovers that the fearsome knight is a girl, and that Sato was the only one who was macho enough to be able to do real damage to her. This was the episode in which Machismo won out. The demons, seeing their commander defeated, decide to flee, and all the soldiers on Sato's side were able to be healed. Suzune, curious, asks Sato what he called his healing punch. He says that his training has made him very strong, and he's not ready to kill anyone. So, at the same time as he punches someone with all his strength, he also heals them. The shock of his blow makes the person faint, so the most a blow from him can do is leave a person in a wheelchair or mentally handicapped, because they won't die. Suzune says he's looking more and more like Rose, but he denies that he's become a hideous monster with a delicious appearance. Out of nowhere, soldiers warn that a giant snake has appeared on the battlefield, and the heroes prepare to leave, because their fight isn't over yet. Sato wanted to accompany them, but Rose says that the war is practically over, and that now they must return to the healing station to deal with those who are already wounded. Sato says goodbye to his friends, then leaves with Rose. Meanwhile, Amelia receives the news that the Black Knight has been defeated. She asks who did it, and the demons say it was a young man from the healing squad. Amelia is frightened by the fact that Rose has such a powerful subordinate and decides to back down. To make matters worse, the heroes who seem to have died appear standing before their army, and this means a total defeat for the demon. Sato arrives at the healing center and continues treating the wounded. At the same time, Kazuki and Suzune defeat the gigantic snake. Sato is happy that the war is over, and Rose praises him, saying that the victory was secured thanks to him, as he saved the nation's two great heroes. She praises him and says he's done very well. Sato then remembers everything he's been through to get where he is, and he starts to cry. Rose pulls up his hood so no one can see him crying, and Sato says he's happy to be there for all of them. Just then, Sato's mana runs out, and he collapses in Rose's arm. Afterwards, Sato tells Bulerin about what it was like to receive the prize from the king, but unfortunately he ended up getting beaten up in front of everyone by Rose. After that, Sato is summoned by the king, and on the way, he is forced to flee from the people who want to thank him for saving the kingdom. When he faces the king, Sigris explains that the knight Sato defeated has been answering their question. However, he has promised to only reveal the power of the demon commanders if Sato shows up to talk to her. Suzune offers to protect him, or at least act as a shield, and along the way, Sigris reveals that the power of healing is the complete opposite of dark magic. That's why Sato's magic always nullified the magic of darkness, and her magic nullified Sato's magic. Hearing this, Sato asks how the knight is, and Sigris reveals that the knight has been covering himself with his armor since he regained consciousness. Sato then runs up to the Black Knight and asks how he is. He admits that he doesn't want to brag, but his punches with full power can break even a rock. The knight, who is actually a woman, admits that she is badly hurt, and Sato makes his decision. He asks Sigris to allow him to enter and cure this demon. Permission is granted, so Sato begins the healing, and the demon girl seems to really like the warm, comfortable feeling of being healed, so she asks Sato to keep caressing her face as if he had already become her man. After that, Rose starts a new training session with Sato. She now wants him to become the god of dodging, because he relies too much on healing magic, and in this world there are enemies who use curse magic, and when he comes across an enemy like that, he must be good enough to dodge all their attacks. She then starts beating Sato like crazy, and when he wakes up and tries to run away, Rose is already by his side, and for 3 days and 3 nights, she keeps knocking him out until she feels satisfied with the result. During those days, every time Sato had some free time, he would visit the imprisoned girl and vent to her that his body is starting to get used to the pain of Rose's punches. The demon girl tries to ask why he's visiting her every day, but she gives up and just covers her face. Afterwards, Sato goes to his friend and becomes envious of Kazuki, who trains alongside the princess, who admires him warmly every day. During the conversation, Kazuki ends up thanking Sato again for saving his life. However, the princess overheard this, and with a serious expression, she She started asking for more details, asking him when he almost died, so Kazuki apologized to her and explained that he almost died during the war. Meanwhile, Rose has gone to that demon and given her two options. One is to be imprisoned forever, and the other is to become a proper, polite demon who doesn't harm human. And she only has these two options because the king of that nation doesn't want to hurt her, because he's afraid of creating even more problems with the demon. After that, she takes the fainted girl to Sato and says that from now on, this demon girl will be the rescue team's employee, and when she wakes up, Sato wishes her a good death because their training is worse than death. During the night, Rose tells him that Sato is going to travel with his friends around the world in search of allies to fight the demons. Sato accepts the mission, and the next day he goes around the kingdom receiving gifts. Suzune appears out of nowhere and starts playing with him. Until out of nowhere, he notices the fox girl and captures her. She says she's been waiting for him and asks him to save her mother as payment for her helping him. Suzune is charmed by the young woman's appearance, and she asks Sato for them to talk in private. As they move along, we see that the demon is undergoing hellish training, and she even calls the bandit-faced men goblins. But they argue with her, saying that they are human. She collapses from exhaustion, but Rose slaps her on the ass, healing her and telling her to run again. On the other side of the screen, the girl explains that her mother needs a healing user, which is why she traveled so far, and of all people, Sato was the only one she saw a future where he would help her, so she helped him first, showing him the future. Sato asks for some time to talk to Rose about it, and during the conversation, Sato tells her about the girl and about everything she has revealed. Rose says that this is a very serious matter and says that she needs to talk to the king, but also informs Sato that he should probably be able to help her, as the king of this kingdom is very good. He returns to Suzune and the girl and explains the whole situation. After that, he goes to the demon girl and reveals that he will be leaving to seek help from other kingdoms. In an embarrassing moment, she reveals her name to him, saying that her name is Femme, but Sato doesn't even say her name, which makes her get angry and leave. After that, Sato and the girl who sees the future are summoned by the king. The king thanks the girl for her help and promises to help her save her mother. He tells her that she can go along on Sato's trip and hopes that on the way they can sort everything out. When Sato leaves with his friends, we see Femme trying to run away, but Rose stops her and tells her that it's time for her to get to know the forest. Sato continues on his adventure, and to find out more about his adventures, you'll unfortunately have to wait for the next season, as the anime has sadly come to an end here. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button. Share this video with your friends is also very interesting, and come back here whenever you want to watch a video like this.